Let's start today's episode.
Welcome back, Period Besties. Today we have Lara Adler here, the queen of knowing everything about environmental toxins and its effects on us. So I can't wait to dive in with you. I am an absolute nerd about this. I first heard of you when I was in health coaching school in like 2010 or something. You have definitely been part of my environmental toxin journey. So for our listeners, what do we need to know about environmental toxins and our menstrual cycles?
A lot. I mean, mostly we just need to learn about environmental toxins, period. No pun not intended there, truly, because it affects so much more than just our hormones. But caveat, I will say, I don't know everything about this. Nobody knows everything about this. Nobody is king or queen of this topic because this is an evolving field and new information is coming out all the time. And some of the topics in the conversation around environmental health are still contested and people don't agree on what the research says. And so it's a complex, very nuanced field of research that nobody knows everything, and anybody who says they know everything, don't listen to them because they don't. That's not how that works. But yes, environmental chemicals play a really significant role in all kinds of health issues. Again, not just hormonal, respiratory, cardiovascular disease, metabolic disease, cancer, developmental issues, pretty much everything from kind of nose to tail on the disease disorder health issue spectrum. There's always a environmental component, always, always, always. Yeah. So it varies in terms of the scale and the impact. And sometimes we just don't know, right? We are making logical assumptions based on what evidence we have in the literature and what we think might be happening for an individual person. So it's a fun and very the floor is always moving kind of space.
That's how we feel about menstrual cycles, right? We're learning stuff all the time.
Yes.
New studies are coming out. We're making new connections. And I do love it when I'm proven right by a new study. But, you know, we're like, okay, as new information comes out, we certainly adapt as well with it in our field. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that we have is when it comes to the menstrual cycles, what are some of the signs we're looking for that it's time, like environmental toxins are building up and we're showing these signs, right? We know that the reproductive system is usually the first one sort of thrown out as our body is trying to deal with toxins, right? If we don't need to make a baby, we need to stay alive.
Right.
So we kind of think of the menstrual cycle as like the canary in the coal mine, right? It's one of the first things that it's showing. So when we're looking at the menstrual cycle and we're looking at our body's effects and we're looking at those toxins, where are we kind of crossing over and going, we should suspect that some environmental toxins are coming into play here?
I'm probably going to answer this differently than maybe you think. Okay. So the short answer is we don't know. We don't know, right? This is an impossible game of pin the tail on the donkey. And I say that because we are all exposed to hundreds of environmental chemicals. And a single exposure or a single chemical that is exposed to chronically over time can behave differently in your body than it does in mine. And so all of these variables make it difficult to kind of say, oh, it's these exposures that are doing that, because how do you tease apart these specific exposures from all of the other exposures and all of the other factors, our diet, our nutrition, all of that stuff. And so it is very complicated. I always feel like it's like detonating a bomb, right? Like you're this wire or that wire and all these things go, but they all play a role. And so I think that I wouldn't want someone to wait until they are symptomatic that haven't been able to be addressed by other things to start looking at environmental exposures, which is often what happens, right? Like it's the last stone that people turn over because they're like, I don't know, I've done everything else. And my position is like, well, maybe if we start thinking about that early on, we can kind of clear the waters a little bit to identify, like, is it an environmental exposure or is it something else? And so there's not like a single point, which I would say like, oh, if you're experiencing this, consider environmental exposures. And to add another layer of complexity, because that's always fun, is the effects of most environmental exposures are from chronic long-term exposure that's measured in years and decades, not in like hours, days, weeks, or even months. So this is where I think there's a big disconnect in the discourse on environmental toxins in general online is everybody's like, oh my God, everything's a 4-alarm fire. I have to hold my cash register receipt in between my t-shirt because I can't touch it because it has BPA. That kind of messaging I think is really dangerous and not accurate because individual exposures like that aren't the problem. The problem is chronic exposure over time. And again, adding 10, 20, 30 years to a trail where we're trying to trace back, it's so challenging. So there is no pin the tail on the donkey. That said, there certainly is evidence that environmental exposures to things like dioxins or PCBs, or even more commonly encountered endocrine disrupting chemicals, can make your period worse, can lead to early menopause, can make menopause symptoms worse, can make endometriosis worse. There's all of these other factors because these are hormonally driven things that are happening in our body. And so the endocrine disrupting aspect of that is really pressing on a bruise. But if you take the finger off, the bruise might still be there. It's not going to ease up immediately. And so I think there's this perception that like, oh, I have these period symptoms or menopausal symptoms or whatever, hot flashes, whatever that is, and my pharmaceutical can't help it or my nutrition can't help it. So like it's toxins. Well, it might not be, but it doesn't hurt. And it only helps to start reducing these things. So I try to take more of the holistic view as opposed to zeroing in and putting like attribution of a specific symptom on a specific exposure.
So smart. So for everyone listening who might be having painful periods or early menopause symptoms, what can somebody do to help reduce, or where do you start if you hear that? Like what would be some things that people could think, okay, that's easy, I can try this?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to lean into what I was just saying about do not panic about every individual exposure. Don't worry if you're like in a car in a lift with somebody that's got air fresheners. Yes, it might give you a headache. No, it's not going to cause a hormonal cascade of nightmare. It's just one exposure. A lot of these chemicals have very short half-lives. They are metabolized and peed out in hours or within a single day. And so we know that our bodies can handle a lot of these exposures. There are caveats there as well. But because this conversation about avoiding or minimizing exposures is so overwhelming, and it's so overwhelming in part because on social media, it is presented in this very scary, extreme, sensationalized way that makes people panic and feel like, oh my God, everything is a 4-alarm fire. It's a hot potato. I can't touch anything. And I feel like that really adds a lot of stress. And it's 2026. Nobody needs more stress. We're good. We're topped up. We're way overloaded anyway. And the first thing that I would say if people are interested in going down this path is pump the brakes on the anxiety because you don't need it for the most part. Where that changes is when people have occupational exposures, which those exposures tend to be larger and more significant. And so the symptoms or the impact of those exposures can present sooner than this chronic low-level hum. From there, from like an action perspective, I really encourage people to start with making changes to reduce exposure. We are never going to eliminate exposure, so we don't even use that language because it's impossible. It sets us up to fail. And so I really encourage people to start with the things that are free and easy to change because, again, first of all, there's a huge accessibility problem with the conversation on toxins that's happening online. It's all buy the supplement, buy this $5,000 sauna, this red light device, like whatever. It's all this monetization. And that's not accessible to truly the vast majority of people. And so recommendations need to be accessible to everyone. And we can't position the conversation about environmental toxins and environmental health only around the sort of like affluent bubble of being able to shop our way out of a problem, which we can't do. And so we start with the things that are within everybody's reach. And the first thing for me that I always tell people is open your windows. Just open your windows in your house. And a lot of people don't do that. Other countries do this regularly. There was an article in, I think, in House Beautiful magazine, and then the New York Times picked it up, where I think it was like a Swedish practice. They call it house burping, which is truly just opening your windows for like 10 minutes a day, every day. And there's a reason why that's a recommended practice, because we have a lot of pollutants in our indoor air, whether that's coming from your scented candles and your air fresheners and your laundry detergent, or if it's coming from the paint on your walls or your flooring or your carpeting or your couch or your furniture. These materials off-gas chemicals. And these chemicals they don't just evaporate and disappear, right? They exist in our space. And EPA has found that indoor air could be 2 to 5 times worse than outdoor air. If you're doing something like painting a bedroom, that can skyrocket and spike to like 100 times worse than outdoor air. Outdoor air is regulated, indoor air is not. And so there's no restrictions on how much chemicals can off-gas from a product, from a couch, or from a carpet. And so we have this kind of hot box that we're in. In the 1980s, homes were built in this more like super energy efficient way, so less air exchange. So we want to close up all the drafts, right? We don't want drafty houses. That wastes gas, it wastes heating and cooling costs, and so we're going to make everything tight. And so that tighter building structure, way that they're built, doesn't allow for easy air exchange. And so opening the windows allows for those chemicals to dissipate and to go outside. There's an expression that says the solution to pollution is dilution, right? So if we can dilute some of this with outside air, we want to do that. Certainly, if somebody lives in a extremely air polluted space, maybe that's not the best thing for them to do. So if it's a wildfire season, like don't do it then, right? So there's all these small exceptions, I think, because this is all new to a lot of people. And so they'll take what somebody says online, I say, somebody else says, extremely literally. Yeah. So when I say open your windows, I'm like, well, I'm opening my windows. Okay, but not during these times. Don't open it if there's wildfire smoke or a chemical fire somewhere. It's Albuquerque, where I live. So we get those every once in a while, some big chemical factory burning. So yeah, opening the windows is a super easy thing to do. Everybody can do that. The other thing that you can do is take off your shoes when you come inside. This is a small thing, but and culturally, a lot of countries around the world do this. In the United States, we tend to not do this culturally. Certain households, yes, but not sort of across the board. And it's not just dog poop that we're concerned about tracking in. It's also heavy metals, it's pesticides from the park or from your neighbor that's spraying, it's particulate matter from vehicle exhaust, and all of that gets tracked into your house. And if you have carpeting, it gets stuck in your carpets. And if you have kids that are crawling around on those carpets, then they are also going to be exposed to those same chemicals at a higher level than you as an adult are, who's not crawling around on the carpet and who's not in that sort of breathing zone. So there's all these kind of layers. But yeah, open your windows, take off your shoes is the first, accessible to everyone. From there, some of the behaviors would be trying to minimize or avoid unnecessary home fragrances. So scented candles and air fresheners, room sprays, those reed diffusers, all of those things are contributing to indoor air pollution in general, but specifically, a lot of them contain endocrine disrupting chemicals, these hormone disrupting chemicals that sort of make up this soup that we're exposed to constantly. And those are typically found in fragranced products because the ingredient that is used to make sure that the fragrance mixture stays, that it doesn't separate, it sticks to your skin or your hair, are phthalates. And phthalates are a well-known class of endocrine disrupting chemicals. It's not a chemical, it's a class. They're not all the same. Most of the phthalates that are problematic in terms of hormone health are found in plastics, and a smaller percentage are found in like personal care products and fragrance mixtures. And so some people in the cosmetic space will kind of divert the attention and say, phthalates are totally fine in cosmetics. They're totally safe. They've been used for decades. The phthalates in plastics are a problem. And half of that is true. So phthalates in plastics are a problem, and phthalates in personal care products are also problematic. So just by getting rid of these scented home products and not buying them, that saves you money, right? That goes in the other direction. And some people, I know everybody wants their house to smell nice. I get it. I know your house shouldn't really smell like anything. Clean doesn't have a smell. It doesn't need to smell like Pine Sol. It also doesn't need to smell like Valley Sunrise, whatever, like these stupid scented candle names. And I will also say that even if you're not burning the candle, it is still emitting pollutants into the air. If you can smell it, it means that those chemical compounds are rising into the air. So that's a kind of a no-brainer to me, easy step for people. Anybody can do these things. And then from there, and we can kind of get into the minutia of some of those other things if you want, but that's like the ground zero for me, is just do those things. Everybody just do those things.
God,
Yeah,
I love it. And I feel pretty good because I'm doing all of
Amazing.
everything.
Great. Yeah.
My brother-in-law lives in Germany and they talk about house burping all the time. They do it every Sunday.
Love it.
And at first I didn't know what she was talking about, my sister-in-law. And I was like, oh, I do that too. I'm going to call it house burping now because
Yeah.
it's just like
Yes.
a cool, funny name.
It's a cooler name. 100%. Yes.
Even in the middle of winter there when it's
Yep.
freezing out, they
Yep.
do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've gotten into such a good habit of doing it that like when the windows are closed, I'm like, ugh, it's stuffy. I hate it. You know, I don't have the windows open when the AC is on, but in that early time in the morning when it's before it's hot, those windows get cracked open.
Yeah. I've always thought it was also less expensive, right? Like switching from fabric softener to using vinegar instead. I switched out
It
all of
can
our
be.
cleaning
Yeah.
products
Yeah.
to vinegar,
It definitely can be.
Yeah. So I was like, this is one of those things that's like, are you newly poor thanks to our current recession? I keep thinking
Yes.
I should do this series on like how to be newly poor.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I
Which
think
out.
of, like people using dryer sheets and
Mhm.
buying, a $5 box every however long. It's like, well, you can go to Trader Joe's and buy a $6 bag of wool dryer balls and use them for years and years,
Yeah. Yeah.
if not
That's
forever.
exactly
The
it.
only reason I've ever had to replace them is because I've lost them. And I'm like, oh, I don't know how I keep losing these, but I've lost
I
some
do.
of them.
Our
And I don't know
dog,
what they
our
do.
dog loves them.
So, yeah. Yes, that would be a perfect dog toy and cat toy. But yes, so that's something that it doesn't cost more than a dryer sheet and it lasts a million times longer. And certainly I understand people want to have their clothes smelling nice, but it's not a necessary thing. I think it's hard, especially when it comes to things like laundry detergents. There is an emotion that you wouldn't think there would be an emotional connection to a laundry detergent, but there is. And that's just because our olfactory receptors are like in our oldest part of our brain that are like where our memories are stored. And so there's this huge connection between scent and memory. So you want to use the laundry detergent that your mom used or your family used. And so there's some comfort there. And so I think that's a harder habit to break is when it comes to those kinds of specifically laundry products.
So
I have a question for you.
I bet
Sorry,
it's a
Sasha.
question. Go, Katie.
I stopped doing the perfumes and the candles and the laundry detergents years and years ago. Now, when I do interact with that, or you're in someone's car, or
Yeah.
you have to do laundry in someone else's home because you're traveling there, I get the worst headaches.
Yeah.
Now, but I didn't then. So talk me through why this is happening, because a lot of my clients say that too. They're like, I can't even be near anyone with cologne, but my boyfriend used to wear it all the time and it didn't
Yes.
bother me.
Yeah, I think there's probably maybe a couple things happening. The analogy that I use is like people going from junk food and fast food and like hyper salt, hyper sweet, Doritos and that kind of stuff. And they're like, vegetables are bland. They don't taste good, so I don't eat them. And it's like, okay, but if you stop eating these hyper palatable foods that are like triggering your brain to be like addicted to them, then your palate will adjust. And over time, you will be like, you know what? That tomato is really good. Those strawberries are perfect. Whereas before, you probably couldn't taste that because your taste buds are like inundated with this wall of noise, so to speak. And so I think that's probably something similar is happening there too when it comes to fragrances. Because you just become more sensitive to them, not sensitized, but sensitive to them because the wall of noise has gone away. Right. And so you're able to tease out and be like, yeah. And I think also just as we get older, we tend to be more aware of like how things affect us. I'm sure these things gave me a headache when I was like 16, but I don't know. I probably wasn't thinking about that. We're clocking, that's what was happening. I think there's layers to that. But yeah, I think our headaches are a good sort of communication from our body to be like, hey, something is up. I don't know what it is, but something is up. And so red alert. Maybe stay away from the things that trigger headaches.
Yeah. I just remember when in college and going to college parties and then coming home and Febrezing
Yeah.
jackets. And
Yep.
now I'm like, I smell Febreze. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
but
Yes.
I would like Febreze my hair.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. That's
Yeah.
wild. There was a TikTok a couple of years ago. I think I did a reaction to it. I don't remember, of some woman who was using Febreze in her underwear or in the crotch of her like yoga pants. And she's like, oh, this is how everything smells nice. And people were like, oh, honey, no, please don't do that. That's not okay. And she got such backlash for it that she ended up being like, I was kidding, guys. And it's like, but I don't know if you were. Anyway, yeah, there's all kinds of things that people will do. And it's not that they're intentionally trying to do something quote unquote bad. They just don't know. They just don't know.
That's what Lysol was invented for, as a douche.
Yes.
So
Yes.
here we are.
Yeah, here we are. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's-
yeah, boy.
Mind
Yeah.
blown.
Yeah, there's all kinds of wild stuff that when you start kind of digging into either the history of products or, just the history of any of this stuff, it really kind of changes your perspective. One of the things that I see spoken about a lot, especially over the last couple of years, is this notion that like, oh, food was so much better 100 years ago. And I'm like, was it? Because it was all adulterated. This was before we had our regulatory, like the Food and Drug Administration, Food and Drug Act of 1938 or whatever. Before those existed, people would put ground up walnut shells in your coffee and dirt in the coffee because formaldehyde was used in milk to preserve it because people didn't have refrigeration. Meat was stored in cans with formaldehyde.
Yeah.
And so like it wasn't safer then. It literally was worse. And so there's this fantasy notion that everything 100 years ago was safer and better and we didn't use pesticides. It's like, no, but we put arsenic in things and we put mercury in things and we put opium in things and we put lead in everything.
Yeah.
And I think there's this sort of fantasy of things being better a long time ago and that the modern take has like made everything toxic and synthetic. And I'm like, well, you don't need synthetic substances for things to be toxic. There are plenty of natural things that are toxic. Formaldehyde, technically natural, right? But putting formaldehyde in your milk. They also there's a great book called The Poison Squad by, I can't remember her name, Bloom, I think is her last name, Deborah Bloom, that talks about all the history of all of this kind of stuff that I'm talking about. They used to puree calf brains and put it in milk to make the milk better and fattier and more yellow or whatever. And so like, I encourage people to read books like that because I'm like, I want you to lift the veil of what you think you know about how food was 100 years ago. It was not better.
Yeah. So I want to go back to something you said about smell being
Yes.
that old sense. It's something I talk about a lot in my work, right? In The Revolution Will Be Bloody, I talk about all of our senses and how they affect our hormonal regulation. So a smell, one phase of our cycle can be really irritating. And then the next phase, it's like, oh God, this is exactly what I need to activate my, whatever.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I know a lot of my clients and a lot of students come back on is, okay, well, can I use essential oils in the house? Can I use, what is a safe way to tap into that power of our sense without the chemical cascade of the scented candles and everything? So is there an alternative?
I mean, technically, yes, but like they're not necessarily better. Essential oils are chemicals. They are just, everything is a chemical. Everything is made of chemicals. And so I think also it's the sort of, imbued in the word chemical is the assumption that we're talking about synthetic chemicals, but that's not the case. Chemicals are everything. Air is chemical. Our hormones are chemicals. Everything is a chemical. And so we have to think about that. But essential oils are volatile chemicals. And some of them are allergenic. Some of them are allergy triggers, migraine triggers, headache triggers for people. People can have sensitivities. So California has I can't remember what it's called. It's like the Cosmetic Fragrance Right to Know Act or something that requires disclosure of certain fragrance constituents that are in essential oils like linalool, right? Or limonene. These are constituents that are found in like citrus. And the same ones that when you peel an orange and it sprays, like that's what you're getting those are essential oils, just in a not as highly concentrated form as like a little bottle. And so, some of those chemicals are problematic. And this policy in California requires the disclosure of, does your product contain any of these, which are known to be allergenic? And for some people, their allergy is life-threatening. They cannot be around those fragrances, even if they come from essential oils. The source isn't the same. If the molecule shape is the molecule shape, it doesn't matter where it came from, whether it's a natural source or a synthetic source. So I think that people go way overboard with the essential oils across the board. And I think part of that is because of the whole structure of the industry, and it's primarily multi-level marketing and direct sales, and there's this motivation to get people to buy more and use it for everything and to ingest it and to drink oils, and I think all of these things are not I would never recommend that. So I would say, like, if somebody is not noticeably sensitive, they're not noticeably reacting to a essential oil fragrance, fine, use it in your home, but also be judicious with its use. Don't have diffusers in every room. If you have pets in the home, I would just say don't use them, because certain essential oils are toxic to animals because they don't have the enzymes to break those things down. And rather than figure out which constituents are in which oils, and there's also conflicting information on that, just don't have them. My cat has asthma. So like I got nothing in my house.
Yeah.
Because she already has an irritated respiratory system.
Yeah. We have lots of animals. That's why everything is like vinegar based now
Yes,
or whatever. Because
yeah.
I don't want to screw them up for, and one of our cats we adopted was older and already had issues. So I feel you on that.
And the same thing that I was saying about like the carpets and all the chemicals that get trapped in there, and dust. That would be another sort of free thing that I would recommend people to do. Nobody wants to do it. I know nobody wants to dust, but to like dust more frequently and to use like a damp cloth, not like I don't know if anybody even uses, not a feather duster, but like those went out in the 80s.
Found a feather duster, literally. Yeah. It was by our mailboxes. Somebody was getting rid of some household things. And I was like, a feather duster? Oh my God.
Yeah, like we were like, what is it, 1850? That's, yeah. I mean, I just remember they had those like synthetic, like nylon-y brushes in the 80s that came out as a replacement to a feather duster. But those were also just terrible magnets for dust. But we want to capture that dust. But like cats, for example, they're groomers. And so they're literally ingesting the chemicals that are in the house dust and in your carpet and whatever. If you have pets, another consideration. Obviously, we're here to talk about hormones and periods, but also our cats are members of our household, and we want to love on them and make sure that they're all safe and healthy like everyone else.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, of course. There are babies.
So, speaking of or babies, yeah. Speaking of those things, one of the questions Katie and I were talking about earlier is that 80% of people with autoimmune issues are women. Do we think that is in part because of, I mean, we know there's other things, there's genetics and that stuff, absolutely. But do we think that, like Katie and I, we coach people every day with Hashimoto's. I have endometriosis, which they're kind of
isn't it? Yeah.
Right. Like PMDD, we're seeing more and more clients with PMDD. In fact, Katie and I did an entire episode about it because so many of the people that we talked to were like, we think you may have PMDD. And they're like, I've never even heard of that. Fibroids, right? Yeah. Fibroids, like 90% of Black women will end up with fibroids at some point. Like the numbers are insane. So do we think that part of the reason that all of these things are affecting women in such huge amounts is partially that environmental load?
Yeah, I would probably say yes. Yeah. We can't say definitively on kind of any of these things. And part of the reason that we can't say definitively, and this is where the conversation about toxins kind of falls apart for some people, is that we don't test chemicals directly on people for ethical reasons. Historically, there have been incidents where this has happened. They're all terrible, terrible smear on the face of science, and those things have happened. But we don't do that currently for obvious reasons. And so what we have is animal testing data that I help identify, is there something happening? What is the mechanism? Can we identify how this is happening? At what levels is this happening? And then we can look at human epidemiological studies data and say, like, are the same things happening? Are these being mirrored in a human population? We know we have evidence, we have mechanistic data, exposure data on animals, and are we seeing similar things in human epidemiology? And for a lot of people, that level of science is like not precise enough. And so they're like, if it's not a randomized controlled trial, I don't want to hear about it. And it's like, well, we don't have those in environmental health, and we won't ever have those in environmental health. And so we are doing the best with the best, like our best science are these meta-analyses, systematic reviews of other data, epidemiological data. And a lot of people are very, unfortunately, very quick to poo-poo epidemiological data because it doesn't prove anything. There's a lot of people that are very dismissive of epidemiology, which is really a shame because it's a very important approach to science and to looking at what we're seeing at population levels. So going back to your question, yeah, there probably is some extra burden. Women are disproportionately exposed to chemicals and cleaning products and personal care products just because we are users of those products more so than men. Every population is likely to have their own sort of unique disproportionate exposure. Like auto mechanics are more exposed to solvents. Flight people in the aviation industry are more exposed to flame retardants because of interior of an aircraft. Carpet, seating is all, used flame retardants in there for obvious reasons. We're going to put aside the fact that they generally don't work, but every population kind of has different disproportionate exposures, but women tend to have a lot more when it comes to personal care product use and household cleaner use, which are products that have a lot of these questionable ingredients or endocrine disrupting chemicals, carcinogens, etc. And so there's probably some degree of that contributing. I'm sure there are other things. I can't remember quite the details, but I vaguely recall listening to, I think it was a podcast talking about some like evolutionary change in women or role, something that's partly why there's more autoimmune disease within this population. It has to do just like with that. But yeah, I would say it's not unreasonable to posit that environmental exposures are part of what is contributing to autoimmune disease, specifically in women. There is certainly evidence that environmental exposures are associated with autoimmune disease, period. And that more women have autoimmune disease might just be layers of things happening. Yeah.
It's super interesting. My best friend's daughter, she has two daughters in middle school and high school, and they've been wearing makeup. And they have like a 20-step skincare routine.
Gosh, yeah.
And I was talking to her about it because I was like, what products are they using? Because they're starting way younger than I ever did.
Yeah.
I think I got that remember that apricot scrub, that orange one that like
destroyed. St. Ives. St. Ives it like shredded the skin on your face. And we didn't know.
But they're starting like in 5th, 6th grade with all of these new products. And I'm just wondering, and I know we don't know this yet, but I'm just wondering the long-term effects of even starting so much younger with all of these products.
It's probably not good, right?
Yeah.
So if we think about like breast cancer, like the younger somebody starts their period, the more their risk for breast cancer increases because they just have more time exposed to estrogen. And so that in and of itself is provides a bit of a crumb trail to be like, okay, well, if we know that being exposed to more estrogen for longer increases your risk of breast cancer or whatever else is at the other end of that journey, then chemicals that behave as synthetic hormones, whether it's estrogen or testosterone or whatever, androgens, whatever it is, those things can kind of tweak the dial of what is happening in our body. And I think one of the things that is very frustrating about the conversation specifically about endocrine disrupting chemicals is there's still a lot of people that lean very heavily on the dose makes the poison, which is the sort of foundation of toxicology from the 16th century, right? That is everything is a poison. It is the dose that makes whatever it is a poison or not a poison. This is even water can kill you if you drink too much line of thinking. And for most exposures to anything, whether it's water or salt or oxygen, that is true. More radiation is way worse than a little bit of radiation. We can handle a little bit of radiation. However, when it comes to like biologically active chemicals, meaning chemicals that can behave like our own natural sort of hormones in this example, those smaller exposures are in the same frequency as what our bodies are producing anyway. So smaller amount does not necessarily mean less harm. And that whole field of endocrine disruption research turns the notion of the dose makes the poison a little bit on its head and in some cases inverts it. And that disconnect, I think, is one of the biggest disconnects in the discourse around toxins in general, because you have a lot of people who just reflexively will say, it's the dose makes the poison. None of these things are problematic. And I'm going, yes. And for these ones, it is problematic. And we have a lot of evidence suggesting that it's problematic. And so I think that's an important part of this conversation. So yeah, the chemicals that we're exposed to chronically from our personal care products, from our makeup as teens, and also the makeup that's made for teens is like it's terrible quality.
Yeah.
It's terrible quality. But then also, like, no parents aren't going to be going out and buying like expensive, better quality stuff for their 7-year-old to just make a big hot mess out of. But yeah, I'm sure that there is some degree of environmental exposures. There's evidence it's a little bit iffy, meaning the relationship is not firmly established between environmental chemical exposures, endocrine disrupting chemicals, and like early puberty. That research, again, is not, there's some research that's like, yes, some research that says no. We probably need more research, larger studies for that kind of stuff so we can find maybe a more definitive answer one way or the other. A lot of the research that we have is small data.
Yeah.
Unless we're looking at epidemiology, we're looking at small data for intervention studies for like, hey, what happens if we swap people's personal care products? But it's a group of like 12 people. So it's not like a statistically significant number of people. And so all these kind of things make it easy to be criticized. All of that said, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the chemicals that are in personal care products, certainly not all of them, but the ones that I think are the biggest, more concerning ones, they have very short half-lives. So they get peed out very quickly. And what that means is that if we implement an intervention, meaning if we say, hey, we're going to swap out all these products, we can see the levels of those chemicals drop in the urine like 40, 50, 60%, like in a couple of days. It's very fast turnaround. And so that's just an indication that like our bodies, one, it can metabolize these, but we need to give it a break, because the problem with a lot of these bisphenols, BPA, phthalates, etc., these sort of everyday chemicals that we're exposed to, is the exposure is happening at a rate that's faster than what our bodies can break them down. And so this is why when we look at, again, population-wide biomonitoring data in the US, we have like, 83 or 93% of people have bisphenols in their bodies. Like at any given time. It's because we're just being exposed at a rate that's faster than our bodies can break them down and pee them out. So if we can take our foot off the gas of what's coming in, then our bodies can kind of empty the bucket or lower what's in the body. And then the goal is to just maintain things at that lower level. And we do that by swapping our products and dusting our homes and taking off your shoes and getting rid of the fragrances. Like it's a very layered practice. And I would say, and Katie, you said you've been doing a lot of these things for a long time now. And that's the goal, right? Is to like implement or adopt this behavior change and then just stick to it. And if it takes somebody a year or 5 years to make all these changes, great. Better than not making them at all. I'm not going to name names, but there was a recent podcast episode that just kind of has been making the rounds. So, somebody's going into somebody else's kitchen and they're like, what's in the fridge? That's bad. This packaging is bad. Throw it all out. And they're like, oh, empty it all out and throw it out. And I'm like, well, it's a terrible approach to this topic. One, it's super privileged. You just threw out a whole bunch of food. No, we're not doing that. And two, that's also just displaying that behavior of like, oh my God, this is bad, I'm going to throw it out, is already creating fear and anxiety for people. So I have a real bone to pick with a lot of the ways that the conversation is had, especially on social media. I could talk about that part for hours.
Oh, I think
that's like another call.
We'll have you back on for that. We could talk to you for hours. Feel like we could ask you 1,000 more questions. We know that you have pivoted your business a little bit. So yes. I would love for you to share with everyone listening what has been going on and where people can find you. And then we're going to do a fun little lightning round.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I have since 2012 have been teaching courses on environmental chemicals. I've since switched to consulting. I'm really interested in kind of taking this sort of enormous vat of knowledge that I have, not just about exposures and stuff like that, but about communicating about these topics and how this information lands for people and how to deliver this information in a way that's empowering and not overwhelming. And so I've been doing this kind of natively in my work for so long, and I still see other businesses, other individuals, practitioners, or whoever struggling to figure out how to fit this piece into their work or how to communicate about this piece in a way that is responsible and ethical and appropriate. And so I'm really just really interested in helping businesses, startups, individuals really figure out what is the right tone for them to share this information so that they're not sensationalizing, they're not fear-mongering, they're not leaving a bad taste in people's mouths, which is very often what's seen. So that's something I'm really excited about pivoting into. I'm also working on a book proposal. I'm also in grad school. There's a lot going on. Although I don't post as much anymore on Instagram, I am still on there at Environmental Toxins Nerds. Eventually, I will get back to doing that. I'm also over on Substack. That's relatively new, so people can check out my Substack, and that's where people can find me.
I love it. I can't wait to hear where everything's at a year or two from now.
Yes.
Sounds really exciting.
Fingers crossed, a book will be in the works.
I love it. We'll have to have you back.
Yes, indeed.
Amazing. All right. So are we ready for the lightning round?
Yeah, sure.
All right. What is your favorite junk food?
Okay. I have one. I just tried to sort out. I want to say Reese's peanut butter cups. They're just the best. And I'm sorry, but like the almond butter healthy versions, not the same. It's just not the same. So a Reese's or Reese's, depending, don't come after me. Reese's or Reese's, I don't know.
We're a Trader Joe's dark chocolate peanut butter cup household over here, so I feel you. We
Okay.
gotta have her. We gotta have it.
Yeah, it's a that, and like chocolate chip cookies aren't junk food, they're just food. That doesn't count. But I'm a big chocolate chip cookie person.
What is your favorite TV series?
Right now, Heated Rivalry. Obsessed. So yeah, that all my free brain cells are there, but that it changes. Truly, if you ask me, if I rewind that, I'll say Buffy. Buffy the Vampire Slayer is like, I've watched that so many times. That is my comfort TV watch. I was a little bit devastated just to find out that the reboot just got pulled, canceled before it even started. So
no, I was looking forward to that. Oh no.
I know. Yeah, I'm so sorry.
I think someone else will pick it up.
I hope so. I don't know. I really do hope so, because Sarah Michelle Gellar being at the head means it won't be bad.
Yes, that's what exactly.
Yeah. So Buffy is my first answer. Heated Rivalry is my second answer. That's more contemporary answer.
There you go. I love it.
Yeah. Okay. What else?
What is a household item you cannot live without?
My cat. She's not an item. I'll just be clear, but I can't live without her. She's the best.
I love that.
Yeah.
Do you take naps?
I don't. I used to. Okay, so in college, I was a heavy napper, like a nap. Any minute I could get a nap in, to the point that a friend of mine, who I think she was a psych major, she had a sleep study that they were doing for part of her class, and she had me go into a dark room with like sticky pads all over me, and they're going to wake me up after certain intervals and see if I remember the words that they told me. And I fell asleep so fast into like deep sleep that her professor was like, oh my God, because I was like, it's nap time. It's dark. I'm done and I'm out. So yeah, I don't take naps anymore. I just don't.
Do you think you could go back into that though, like easily?
I don't know. I feel like if I went to take a nap, I just would sleep for the rest of the day. I'd be like, well, I'm not getting up now.
Yeah.
We're not eating dinner. We're not making dinner. We're done, right? It's like taking your bra off when you get home. You're done. You're not going out after that. So it's kind of like that.
Amazing. Where is your favorite vacation spot?
Oh, I don't know if I have one. So I used to really like camping. I was an Oregon girly for almost a decade. Love outdoor stuff, love camping. Now at 48, I'm kind of like, I don't want to sleep on the ground. I just don't want to do that. That's so uncomfortable. I don't want even an air mattress. I want a bed. So I would have said camping as like a great unplug from reality, but it's not that anymore. And I don't know what's replaced it. I don't know. Oh, as somebody who's run her own business for 14 years, I don't really get that many vacations. So yeah.
Get that. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for being here. I
You're
learned a
welcome.
lot. I know Stasha and I talk about this with our clients all the time, and we're always like, check out Lara Adler. She's the best. So thank you for joining us. And we can't wait to have you back on. So let us know when that book is ready to
amazing.
go.
Well, that might be a little while, but
Yeah, or something that comes up in
Process of
between.
it.
yes, something that will come
Keep
up.
us posted.
100%.
Yes. And thank you for everyone that's listening, and we will see you in the next episode. Bye for now.
A big shout out and thank you to our sponsors for today's episode, Period Coaching School and Katie Bresek Wellness.
Thanks to you, our favorite bestie, for listening to the Period Besties Podcast, where no topic is TMI. And of course, share this episode with your besties.
Remember to leave us a 5-star review, nothing less than the best for us besties, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
You can follow us on Instagram at Stasha Washburn and at Katie Bresek, or email us at periodbestiespodcast@gmail.com.
Check out more about us at katiebresek.com and periodcoachingschool.com. And of course, check the show notes for free goodies and extras that support this episode.
We'll see you on the next episode.
Bye for now, besties.